Welcome to the Magnetic Man podcast. This is the place for modern dating advice for men. What does it mean to embody your masculinity and be an effective, attractive man in the world today? Thanks for tuning in to learn how to operate in this world as a man. And in today's episode, it's very exciting. We have a conversation with Janek, who what some people would consider natural with women. And it's really interesting the topics we discuss because I don't really talk about these a lot. We break down these effective male strategies of how they look at dating, at women in the world in general, but also be able to break down in terms of how you can implement some of that in your life. So it's not just these vague ideas in terms of just be yourself. We go into the key concepts and make it very practical for you. So we're going to deep dive into the key mindsets that are going to help you break through, and also share some personal stories about myself and my journey from being a nice guy who was very restricted when it came to dating and when it came to women, and how I use those different mindsets and different techniques to break through and get to a new level. So thank you for gifting me for your attention for this episode, whether you're walking, whether you're lying down listening to the podcast in the gym. Thanks for tuning into the Magnetic Man, and let's jump straight into the episode. Welcome to the Magnetic Man podcast. I'm very excited for today's episode where we're going to be joined by a man that I have seen as some of the best I've seen when it comes to being with women. And I've traveled the world. I've worked as a dating coach. I've met a lot of the best guys in the industry. And not to prop and blow too much smoke up his backside, but this guy was able to evoke level of attraction in women that I've rarely seen replicated before. He was what we would call a quote unquote natural with women. And what I'm hoping to do in today's episode is to bring up some behavior patterns that I would watch in Janek. And I want to hear his thoughts on it, how he viewed the situations as well. And hopefully from my knowledge in dating and all the research that I've done, also be able to break down some of these behavior patterns so that you guys listening in will be able to learn and implement this in your life to be more effective when it comes to your dating. And just be a better man overall, because this is what this podcast is all about, how to be a better, more effective man in the world. So Janek, thanks so much for joining us on the Magnetic Man podcast. Good to have you here.
Yeah, good to be here, Daniel. Good to see you again.
Yeah. Anything else to add to that intro, or you think it covered the bases?
I think it covered more than the bases. I think you saw more of me than what I saw, I guess.
And that's going to be really interesting.
Feel the same.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting. So we're going to pick up all the nitty gritty, some of the dating success, I would say, that Janek had as a young man and probably all throughout his ages. But I kind of wanted to start at the beginning. I was going to bring up a picture, but we've known each other since we were like 5 years old. So it's not that someone I've come across recently. Because I think the way that a man is raised, his family, all of that type of stuff has a big impact on the man that he becomes one day. So I was just curious if you could pick it up. I'm obviously going to share how I saw things develop for you, but you'll obviously have a different perspective because you were there from a first person experience. So tell me a little bit about kind of like your early childhood years and how they shaped you. I obviously saw you with a very strong mother. She's very blunt. She's very powerful. She's to the point. You've got an older brother and an older sister as well, which I saw them actually develop differently to you. You've got a dad who's also would get a lot of attention from women, although he's not this like flamboyant, like in your face kind of character. What are your initial thoughts in terms of how like your parents or your early upbringing kind of shaped you as a man?
I think the main thing as a kid, because I was the last child, it kind of got me brought up more by my older brother and sister, which I think allows you to be a lot more rebellious and not have to play by the rules as much. Whereas I think as only child or first child, you get all the reprimands from your parents. So you kind of can be like a little bit naughty and get away with it. And maybe that sets up for a bit more of your late teens and adolescence of that behavior.
Yeah, for sure. Because it was interesting. Obviously, you have an older brother. Again, genetically, you guys look very similar. But like internally, I believe you guys are wired very different. You know, you had more this rebellious, conflict, non-people pleaser part of you, where again, I think also your brother's a great guy, but he was more kind of like more agreeable. I know he also went into like a church religious thing, so maybe that also helped form him, where you didn't really have that even in your teenage years.
Yeah.
How do you kind of see it with your brother and the differences?
Well, I think my brother, when he was younger, he was also quite naughty. But yeah, like you said, he got into the religion side of things when he was like 19. So he did have his little rebellious streak, but yeah, he kind of sharpened up pretty quick. I don't know. He's obviously saw things I didn't see and wanted to change his life at that age. Whereas
Yeah,
when I was younger, I kind of just used to, I suppose, go to like youth groups and stuff more just to meet chicks than to actually do the
yeah,
right thing, I guess. I don't know.
yeah.
But yeah, I think the rebellious side of thing comes more from my like this whole side of surfing as a kid. Like surfing's not what it was then as it is now. Like
Mm,
if you were a surfer back then, you were already like a rebel to society. So it kind of
mm,
creates that nature where you're like, fuck everyone else. I'm doing my thing. I don't care if you call me
mm,
a beach bum and I can't make a living out of it. More than
mm.
like, and the gift thing was my parents actually said it's fine as long as you sort your shit out eventually, kind of thing. They never like
Yeah.
sterned me into doing like a proper job, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, you had that kind of freedom. Like I know you would like miss school and bunk school and just go to the beach and surf. And we'll chat about that later because I don't know if you felt this way, but probably a lot of people like didn't have a lot of high hopes for you in life to some extent. They're like,
Yeah,
he's just going to be this surfer bum, and you've actually made a real success out of your life and built a great business, which we'll talk about later. So you saying that kind of surfing mentality, that rebelness, that like helped you lean into that like being more disagreeable and doing your own thing at a young age. Is that what you're
yeah,
saying?
exactly. Because you got to question a lot of things when you're going against the grain. When you're going with the grain, you kind of just conform and follow what people tell you, and you see that as the right way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. Also, I guess maybe you could comment on this. I'm just thinking about it now. Also, when you kind of in that surf culture, you're around a lot of older guys. You're getting initiated, and you kind of have to like, mommy's not there to protect you. So it's cool
Yeah,
for you to say "f you, mom," but then you got to go out with some older boys, and I'm guessing that probably actually helped in your development and helped you grow up in some of those ways.
yeah, definitely. I think some days, or most days when you're younger, the beach is actually more scarier than home because, I mean, if you're not surfing and you're on the beach and the waves is pretty bad, you just got a bunch of older guys trying to kick your ass the whole time. So if you are scared, you
Yeah,
just end up running home, really. That's like your safe place, but not your
yeah.
enjoyable place because the beach is where you want to be. So you got to like endure the hardship to get the pleasure, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting that kind of lifestyle of you being at the beach and being a surfer and stuff, like how much that did influence into your development. I know you're obviously also a big fan of Jordan Peterson. This was something I wanted to talk about because this is a thing I see a lot of men struggling with, where they talk about the process of like individuating from the mother, where it's like your mom has like an idea of the man you should be and how you should be raised. Um, and then it's part of a teenage process as a man to rebel against that, to say screw you, I'm doing my own thing. On the surface it looks like you could be a bit naughty and a rebel, but that's actually really healthy for a man. He's starting to live by his own rules versus what mommy says he should do. And I would say I was on the opposite end. I was probably a bit more of a mommy's boy, like, oh, my mom was giving me comfort. I would just agree. I think it took me a long time to go through that individuation process. But I'd like to hear your thoughts because I remember some crazy stories growing up where you would run away from home, you would have big fights with your mom, she wouldn't feed you, you would go sleep at our friends' houses. How did you kind of see that conflict with your mom kind of playing out, and what was going through your head during some of those moments?
I mean, yeah, at the time I didn't really know what it was. I just thought she was
Mm,
stubborn as hell and I was stubborn as hell. And we were just like butting heads. We couldn't agree
mm-hmm,
on anything. Um,
mm,
but yeah, I'd say looking back now, it definitely was a separation because I could now, when I did leave for like a substantial amount of time, like maybe a month or so, when I
mm,
was 17, I think. Obviously, it was over like school holidays, so it wasn't like I was going forever. But in that
mm,
time, I was doing my own thing, not liaising with my parents at all, and kind of making my own decisions. Maybe they weren't good decisions, but I feel like there was a bit of a breakaway there. But then when I came back, it's not like much had changed. She just knew I could be fine on my own, but we still butted heads for years after that. It was only until the day, I think, when I moved out of home when I was like 23 or 24. Because obviously I used to leave for like 6 months and come back. And then for the 6 months I was home, it was all good for like 3-4 months. And before I left, you're like, fuck, I can't wait to leave. My mom is giving me gears again. But then,
Yeah.
yeah, once you officially move out, then you like have that full separation. And every time you see them, it's actually lovely because you're only spending good times, not annoying times with each other. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that early stages was good because it made me independent at an early stage. And I thank my parents for that because they always believed in independence. So like basically I would never just get shit. Basically, if you wanted
Mm.
something, you had to go work for it. Like you had to earn what you want. You don't just get it. That's
Mm.
what I was always taught.
Yeah, you had like a lot of that kind of independence. Like I remember like you would even come to school some days with us and you would have to like run or walk from your house, which was, I don't know, 15 minutes
Yeah, it
away,
was like
maybe not
grade
even that
three.
long. And yeah, you were like 10 years old and you would have to like walk the streets for like 20 minutes, like just to get a lift to school.
Uh,
And it wasn't just that, like your parents had you guys doing chores and stuff. And at the time I thought I had it easy where I'm like, my mom was a bit soft and my dad wasn't around, so I wouldn't have to do that stuff,
uh,
which in the short term looks like, oh, I'm winning. I don't have to do wash the
yeah.
dishes. But later on in life, I saw like, wow, that's teaching you responsibility. Yeah, like maybe to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, when you're young and you see your friends not having to do chores and stuff, and you're like, "Fuck, they living the good life," and we stuck
Yeah.
here grinding our asses off. But because I'm a bit
Mm.
older now, you can look back. It teaches you that hardship. It like makes a lot of other things seem easier. So like when something that's a struggle, like since I think because of that, I don't feel like I've ever really struggled too hard. Maybe in other people's eyes, they've seen me struggle, but I think because of that constant, like you could say, discipline or needing to do something, it makes everything else easy, which I feel like at the time I hated it and I thought I was like the most unlucky kid in the world. And then, like I
Yeah.
said, I had a conversation with my parents when I was about 27, actually, when I started watching Jordan. And I thanked them for
Yeah.
the upbringing because I always
Mm.
neglected them about it. And
Yeah.
it was quite a special moment with the parents, really.
Yeah, that's cool. I've obviously seen you guys heal a lot of your guys' relationship because it was very challenging for a lot of moments. But yeah, I think that it was really beneficial for you. And the cool thing, and I think we both came from similar family backgrounds where we didn't have a lot of money. This was always something I kind of admired about you, and even your success with women. Because some guys would always be like, "Oh, like girls just like rich guys, and you got to have like a lot of money and a fancy car." And you just blew so many of these myths out of the water. Like all these things I would say, guys, I'd be like, that's not what I've seen.
Yeah.
And we're laying the foundation here. Like we'll talk about the girls and how that came in a second, but it's like all of these factors were so critical. And the big thing, like you're saying, stubborn with your mom, the fact that you even had a strong enough identity to be stubborn as a fucking 14-year-old to like your mother, um, that's pretty amazing. Like I think that, like you said, helped your development as a man. I'm curious, like it's weird, like obviously I know your dad, he's a great guy, he's worked really hard, but I didn't really see him be like a big influence in your life. He's not like a big speech kind of guy. I don't know, but that was just me looking in from the outside. Do you think your dad played so much of a role? Your mom's also such a big personality. Yeah, any comments on that?
Yeah, I think my dad was always like, how can I say it? I always saw it like my mom was the one that was kind of feisty and you had to negotiate with her first, but then the dad was always on top. So if things went wrong here, dad will come down, he'll say one word and you just shut up and listen. There was like, that was the order of hierarchy, you can say. And the way he
Yeah.
did it is he never really talked too much. He kept it cool, calm, and collected. So you knew if he was pissed off, you fucked up big time. Like
Yeah.
he would take a lot of shit until the shit hits the fan, pretty much. And I think
Yeah.
that's a good thing as a father, is not to be like, he was never so much like, do this, do that, do this. Like that's what my mom did, and that's why I butt heads with her, because she would say things, I'd say no, and then my dad would kind of watch and enjoy it. But as soon as I pissed my mom off too much, he obviously, it's his wife, he valued her more, and then he'd step in, and
Mm.
then as soon as he stepped in, it was like that's when I'd become soft. Not that he ever like
Yeah.
physically abused me or anything. It was just respect thing
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting because I never really saw that side of your dad. And I was kind of like, does he just chill there and like not do much? But it's interesting from your side. It's like your mom can be like the yapper, like get stuff done. But it's like
Yeah,
your dad really had the power in terms of the respect when he got involved, which
yeah,
is, yeah, your dad's always had that cool, calm, groundedness about him without being this like in your face, like loud talking all the time kind of
exactly.
guy. So
It's like
that's
a less is
interesting.
more. It's like a less
Mm,
is more kind
yeah.
of guy. Like say less and what you say means more.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think I've heard someone talk about almost like the silverback gorillas. The biggest kind of alpha guy isn't the one running around making all the noise. That's normally like the little
Yeah,
yapper. It's actually the guy who's chilled at the back and doing nothing. But as soon as he gets involved, everyone's
yeah,
just like backs off. So it sounds like that kind of
exactly.
dynamic. Yeah, yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Okay, so let's start talking about women coming into the picture because this is where it's going to get interesting. I'm sure a lot of guys are interested in this. So I'll kind of explain some of the things I saw from my perspective, like going into our teenage years. But like you were someone who I remember you got a girlfriend at quite an early age, 14, 15, or something like that was your first serious girlfriend. And I think out of like the people I knew, you were like one of the first guys to lose your virginity. And I think again, you're around 14, 15, you can correct me. But I remember at that time I'd like just had my first kiss, like the idea of sex was just like so far away from me that like when you told me the story or I heard about it, it was almost like unbelievable. Like you heard someone just went to Mars or something. I think I
Yeah.
was also kind of doing like a religious Christian thing, which we can talk about in a second. So I was like, it wasn't almost like I would tell myself I didn't want that, but I think that was just religious programming more than anything.
Yeah.
How did you kind of see it? Like you had this girlfriend, like did you think it was a big deal like sex, or it's like, oh, it's just something that happens, like no biggie? Like kind of walk me through your first kind of sexual experience and what was going on in your head.
Yeah, no, definitely was a biggie. Like I didn't think it was gonna happen that soon. Like you said, I had a girlfriend, we had dated for like a year or so, and basically, yeah, we only, I don't know if you know bases, but like we're only done first and
Mm,
second base. I don't know if you want me to explain
mm,
everything, but I was
mm,
just saying go to like third base and fifth base is pretty much sex. And then I
mm,
was just like, let's take the next step. And then she suggested sex. So I was like, fuck, okay. But I knew we were young and I wasn't going to pass up opportunity because, when opportunities come, you kind of have to take them. Otherwise, you miss out or you
yeah,
regret them. So,
yeah,
yeah, that's pretty much how it happened. It wasn't great for her, obviously. At least I don't think it
yeah,
was. But yeah, that's pretty
yeah,
much how it happened. I was just asking, like, recommending to get to the next step, and she
yeah.
didn't. Obviously, the communication wasn't clear, and she just went to the last step. And I said,
Yeah.
okay, definitely.
Yeah, you score. You followed
Yeah,
her
it wasn't
leadership
like,
in that regard.
yeah,
Yeah. And what do you think it was? Because it's like again, like even if guys had girlfriends, it's like yeah, they might kiss or like you said, might do some of these other bases. Do you think it was something you did, or the kind of like how she saw you, or do you think like she was just down for it and like you were just the lucky guy, kind of there? Because I think it was more than that.
yeah. I don't think she was down for it. I wouldn't say she was. At least she seemed innocent. Very. Um, I think, yeah, maybe her nerves. She didn't know what to say at the time, and then she kind of just blurted something out, and then I kind of enjoyed what she blurted. And I mean, it's not like I don't think she regretted it. She never said she regretted it. We continued to do it afterwards. It was actually our
Yeah,
third time was our best time ever, and then we did it loads after that. Um,
nice. Yeah.
but yeah, it was definitely something that was like, how can I say, not prepared. I wasn't prepared for it at the time. It kind of caught me by surprise. And I usually like it when things like that happen. It's like your best nights out are always the ones where you plan to stay in.
Yes.
It's
Okay.
never
So
like,
it's kind of like again, we're going a bit Jordan Peterson. It's like that kind of border of order and chaos. Like this is what I'm comfortable with. It's like wow, that's kind of out there, but you
yeah,
you kind of rose up to that challenge. You didn't run away. I know you said now you were a little bit unprepared. If I remember correctly, you were like at her house, and then when you like she said she was keen to have sex, you didn't have a condom, and you ran to a nearby petrol station or something. What
yeah,
happened?
yeah, pretty much that. And then I'd like, obviously, I'd never put a condom on. So then I was running down, and I was like, I don't want to fuck this up. So I'm like, on the way down before I get into the house, I try to put it on, and
Like
yeah,
outside, like in the road.
yeah, pretty much while I'm running. It was just I was just an idiot, really. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, the whole scene was just a disaster. But it at least broke that boundary, so that the next time was a bit better. And then I actually asked our one friend Henry. I don't know if you've interviewed him or not,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
asked him for some advice because like he was a year or two older than me and he'd already done it.
Mm.
And then once he gave me some advice, it definitely helped a lot. Going like, don't have sex without advice before, definitely.
Yeah,
I had
that's
no
good.
fucking
Well, I
idea what
don't
was
think we
going
had
on.
as much internet today, like so you could.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, maybe on the internet people can YouTube it now, but yeah, that's really interesting because it's almost like how crazy of a step that was to some extent. Like you still took it, you know. Like I remember,
Yeah,
even for me, I'd probably only lose my virginity 5, 6 years afterwards, and it like builds up to such a big deal. I think that's a thing with fear. Like it's like you feel
yeah,
the fear, but if you just kind of do it then and there, it's still gonna suck and it's gonna be weird. But that's gonna be the worst of it. But the more you resist it and you kind of leave it and leave it and leave it, then it like bigs up and it becomes this big thing in your head and like you've made it into way more than it needs to be, where you kind of like, boom, you saw it there and whatever, you just kind of took it on as it happened.
yeah. It's exactly that. Like if you let fear control you, it's just going to build up, and when you actually face it, which is inevitable, it's going to be a lot harder and a lot more challenging.
Mm.
I don't know who taught me this. Maybe my dad or someone, but it was like, whenever you fear something, just go straight at it, because if you shy away from it, you're going to have to face it eventually, and the longer you face it, it just gets bigger and bigger. Like a, how can I say? You have like a little tax thing you have to pay, and you leave it for a year, it's this amount. You leave it for 2 years, it gets more and more. And it could have been the simple little thing you just faced, and now it's like this huge problem that you have to face. And that's most things with fear.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing about it is when you let fear control you, your life takes slower to live the way you want it. And when you face it straight away, it propels you in a more forward direction that you don't get stuck in these delayed passive ways of living. Fear is like your best guide, basically. If you don't follow it, you just kind of end up stale, I think.
That's really interesting. So I want to talk about a topic because I was always kind of curious how this impacted you. So you're probably aware of the concepts and stuff like in terms of like sexual selection for men and females. Like it's a little bit different in terms of how they operate. And speaking specifically for men, it's like there's normally like a slant. You know, there's normally 10-15% of men that are really sought after by women, and then there's like 80% of the men who are kind of feeding on the scraps, you know, the Pareto principle. And I would definitely put myself in the feeding
Yeah,
on the scraps category. And you were obviously kind of in that top category, you know. Like I remember also you had this experience where it's like you ended up like sleeping with like some like realtor lady who was like, I don't know, 28 or 30, and you were like 15 or 16 at the time. Do you remember the
yeah.
lady I'm talking about?
I
Yeah.
remember.
I'm
Yeah.
like,
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
curious what was going. Yeah, I was curious, like, what's going on in your head at the moment? Like, why do you think these women are so interested in you? Do you think because you're good looking? Do you think because you're funny? Like, how do you kind of process, or you're just not really thinking about it and you're just like going with the flow, so to speak?
Yeah, like I mean, I don't think I'm the best looking guy there is. So I don't think it's based
Mm,
100% on looks. I don't think I'm the worst looking guy either. So that helps too. But I definitely
mm,
don't think it was looks. I think it
mm,
was. I mean, most of the time it was more you were. I wasn't really ever looking. Like I was just kind of doing my thing, and then they happened to pass by at the time, and then I don't know. You give them a little bit of attention, and then you obviously don't give them all the attention straight away. Like there's difference in relationships, but the main basis of getting, you could
mm,
say in the beginning, it was always like show them you're interested, but don't show them you
mm.
100% interested. It was always like I would always be like, hey, you
Yeah,
hot or you sexy or whatever, or like I'm kind of into you, but then you
yeah,
don't go and like bend your back
yeah,
straight from the beginning. And I think like I mean with that older
yeah.
lady, I don't know, she just used to come to the beach, and then I think maybe you or Kyle or someone was like, go talk to her. And then obviously I was nervous, but I just went and said, hey, and then got her number. And then one night she was drunk. She just phoned me and she's like, what are you doing? And I was drunk, and then we met up. And that wouldn't have happened if I didn't go
Yeah.
talk to her.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting because obviously from your perspective, like it did take courage at these certain points, but it's like in some ways you just did it, you know, like I've worked with a lot of guys on my own journey, like that can sometimes take years of work for guys, even just to be comfortable, you know?
Maybe do
Um,
some dishes and
and
chores. And then that
exactly,
would be
exactly.
easier.
Yeah, and it's a lot of the things we spoke about, like having a good group of male friends, hanging out with older friends. All of these processes were like, to me, I believe, like stepping stones on your journey. So the reason I bring it up with also this older lady, because like I know like you, like a lot of guys, guys that are really good with girls. It's like you getting all this female attention, and then maybe you do have a girlfriend and you do really care for her, but I know you obviously had some challenges in terms of like, and I've had as well, like staying faithful in a relationship. But I almost think it's like, especially at a young age, I think once you're older, then you should have like morals and principles that guide you a little bit better. But as like a young man developing and like you're getting all this female attention, and like maybe you feeling the shame, like, oh, I just like cheated on my girlfriend, like, oh, what's wrong with me? But yeah, I always thought it was really different for guys like you, because some guys are there like dreaming they had that much attention and you just getting flooded with it. And it's like, I would say it's overwhelming for a young man. It's very hard for him to say, like, no, sorry, I've got a girlfriend. It's like, wow, you getting women throw themselves at you. Like, how did you kind of process it? Because I know you weren't like mean at heart or wanted to do any mean things. But like, was that challenging for you to like stay faithful, or like, how did you see it back then?
Yeah, I definitely think it was challenging to stay faithful, especially back then, because like all you think about when you say 17 to 23, all I thought about was myself, and I didn't really, even though I was in a relationship, it was young love, whatever, but you're kind of just doing it for your own experience to see what you like, what you don't like, and yeah, I'd say I mean I didn't date a lot of girls like in relationships. I think I had like three girlfriends, like long term ones. Um, but yeah, the one thing I see with looking back at it is that I never really thought of them too much. It was always self-serving, the relationship. Um, but yeah, like you said, as you get older, morals come in, and that's I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing at that age because you need to kind of go this way to see how far you can go and then come back from it. Um, as long as you don't, the only thing with doing that is you do get bad habits, and then you do have the self-serving nature in you, and that's the hardest part to crack later, I'd say. Like, I mean, I still deal with it today. You just got to have self-control. Um, but yeah, if anything, I'd say I probably hurt a few girls, definitely. But in the process, I also got hurt sometimes because it was weird. Always the ones you end up liking the most are the ones that hurt you, and then you kind of have this notion of like, I'm never going to get hurt again, so I'm just going to hurt others, you could say. Um, I didn't really think, like I said, I was young. I was always just thinking about myself. I didn't really think of it too much in depth. But looking back, I think that's how it was relayed in my head. But what I was thinking now is a thing that helped a lot when I was younger is that girls were never my primary object, if that makes sense, or
Mm.
primary focus or passion. Object was definitely not the right
Yeah.
word there. But yeah, like I was always trying to be like a professional sports player, whether it be tennis, bodyboarding, whatever. So it doesn't have to be one of those, just anything in particular. I think as much as females want you to be their primary source, they respect you when you have other things that aren't another female, I guess. And
Yeah.
I think that's what helped me a lot as a kid. Like I said, I didn't have the best looks, this or that, but they obviously saw the attention to them wasn't um, all that like. Well, I wouldn't give them 100% of attention because often, like, they would be like, "Do you want to hang out?" And I'd say, "No, I need to go surf because the waves are good," or something like
Mhm.
that. And I think that definitely helped a lot as a kid. I'm just trying to think back because to me it just seemed normal and easy. It didn't seem like I was actually trying anything.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to like break it down in my head. But I know that was,
Yeah.
I know it pissed off a lot of
Yeah.
girls the whole time. Like, why don't you want to come watch movies with me? And I'm like, because the wave's good tomorrow. I need to
Mm.
go to bed early. And it'll piss them off, but then they would still be keen the next day to see you after I've surfed.
Yeah, that's a huge point. You know, I jotted down some 4 lessons I learned from you in terms of masculinity, and that was number one, where it's really important for a man, put your purpose as a man before woman. Now, this could be a controversial thing to say into today's age, but a man should have like his mastery. It's like, what are you building in the world? What are you putting your attention on that you want to get better at and that you want to develop? And for a man, that should always be your North Star, you know, your primary
Yeah,
focus. And it's almost like a woman's job to like try convince you to make her your primary focus. And it's not saying there shouldn't be a compromise to some extent, but it's almost a trap for men, because I've fallen into this, and a lot of our friends have as well. As soon as you put the girl, you're like, oh, she doesn't want me to go surf. She wants me to watch movies with her. Okay, I want to be a good boyfriend, so I'm going to do that. And then it's like, even though she's lying there cuddling with you, like inside, she's just lost so much respect for you. You know, it's like, wow, if I can so
yeah,
easily
unknowingly
knock
as
this
well.
man up as, yes, yes, it's all happening almost unconsciously. And men are just falling for
Yeah,
this over and over and over again. And I would say, like, for you, I guess surfing was always that thing, you know, like you would put that always above woman. Um, yeah, like did you ever have those conflict situations where, like, obviously you mentioned a few times now, but like yeah, it's pretty impressive again at that young age that you were able to deal with the negative emotions of women that would come your way. Like you weren't afraid of those, and you would still do
yeah,
your thing. And the funny thing is, on the other end, the girl still wants you, probably even more after that. So yeah, maybe tell us a little bit
yeah,
about like how that played out for you.
yeah. I think dealing with the emotions, the negative emotions, was, like I said, it was easy and simple because it wasn't like a priority. So it's not like, obviously it sucked. You don't want to make people angry, but you're like, I'm doing this because this is what I love and what I want to do. So it was kind of easy just to brush it off, you could say, or deal with it next time. Because, yeah, I don't know. I always found in the moment someone gets emotional, then it's like if you try to deal with it right there and then, you're going to pretty much say a lot of things and fight a lot longer. Whereas you just go do your thing, come back, they'll have a sense of why you did it, and kind of everyone gets more understanding over time, basically. And
Mm,
yeah, I think it
mm,
was easy to deal with negative emotions because you'd go surf and that'll surfing was a great one. I don't know what other sports can do this or anything else,
yeah.
but if you're dealing with negative emotion, you can go surf, you can get out of your head into the ocean, and you come
Mm,
back with a clearer perspective. And most of the time,
mm,
it's like a little free zone, you could say. And yeah, like I said, when I was younger, girls' emotions was definitely not like a top priority. It's
yeah.
something I'm working on now because obviously, as you get older and you want like a real relationship, you have to become a bit more emotionally smart and understand
Yeah.
things and know how to deal with them. It's probably my
Yeah.
weakest point in the relationship at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting, like you're saying, longer term now, maybe that thing that really helped you in the beginning, now you it's some work you need to do. Because I would see you do this in other ways. Like this would also like really stand out to me. I remember like if by some luck I ended up like hooking up with a girl at a bar on a weekend, and then I'd like see her the next weekend, and maybe I wouldn't really be that keen to like be with her again, but I'm like, I guess I'm kind of stuck. Like I can't go talk to another girl. Like that would be so mean. Where I think I remember you telling me once, you're like, yeah, when I that happens to me, I
Yeah,
just
I
go kiss
remember.
another girl where she can see it, and then she gets the message, and it's like that was like so far out of my reality. I'm like, bro, like I can't even understand like what you just said. But again,
Yeah,
it's not pedestalizing a woman's emotion. It's like, hey, I'm on my purpose. This is what I want to do, and like you said, maybe there's a bit of balance later on to work out, but like that was almost part of being this cool, attractive man. It's like, yeah, you kind of broke some hearts along the way, not intentionally, but it's just almost like par for the course in the kind of man you were, or the type of dating situations you'd find yourself in.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know. It seemed like, yeah, like at the time, it seemed like the most, in my head, the most mature way. But obviously, you could have just gone and spoke
Mm,
to the chick and been like, I don't like you. But also,
yeah.
like I said, I wasn't good with emotions as a kid, so it was always I'd do actions rather than emotions, and it seemed like an easier way
Yeah.
to deal with things. And
Yeah.
I
The
think
the
girls pick up on
yeah, go for it.
actions. Girls pick up on
Mm,
actions more than emotions in beginning phases, because they're like, if you
mm.
can come to the table with actions, even though you could be this big guy who makes all these speeches, but you don't pull through on your actions, then you're just full of shit. And girls pick up on that very quickly, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, you were really good at that. Like I almost saw you, probably even still now, not even in a bad way, but almost like a bit like caveman, you know? It's like you wouldn't think that much. You'd just be like, I'm gonna go do this thing, and then you'd just go do it. In a way that really served you, you know, where I think for myself and a lot of guys, it's like you're overthinking, you're thinking you're doing something smart by thinking about it a lot, but then you just don't end up taking any action.
Yeah.
And that's not effective. Women don't find that attractive. They're thinking, wow, if something was going to happen, do I want the guy sitting there overthinking everything, or do I want the guy who's going to actually do something, you know? And I think that's deeply wired into like female psychology in terms of what they look for in a man.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, the caveman days, it's like if you got your family and you need to feed them and there goes a buck running past, are you going to overthink how to kill it and then miss the opportunity, or are you just going to run at it with a spear and kill it? And that's where I think it goes back to the, like the hardwiring from back in the day, where actions definitely are more attractive than words to a woman.
Yeah, and I guess maybe you've taken this to the extreme, and maybe you've had to balance this out. I don't know if you told me the story or someone else did, but it was obviously later on with your current fiance. But I also heard a story of once you guys went on holiday, and like I think it was her birthday that day, and I think the surf was really good. So you're like, hey, I'm just gonna go like surfing for a bit, and then we're gonna like hang out. It's your birthday. We're gonna do stuff. And long story short, like the surf's really good and you kind of stay there for hours. It starts raining. She's sitting on the beach, like crying. And then, like, afterwards, you come in. Now, of course, there's a part of the story where it's like, hey, maybe you shouldn't have done that. Like, be a bit more considerate. So I get that. I'm not downplaying that at all. But it's almost like, I want to say it's like that level of authenticity is one way of looking at it, where you were just like, so like, okay, this is what I want to do. And maybe you would have done it differently going back, but it's like, again, your purpose, like what you found purposeful, that always came first, sometimes even to your detriment.
Yeah, like I'm
Yeah.
laughing about it now, but obviously at the time we've spoken about it a lot, so I can't laugh about it now. It's not
Yeah.
like I'm a straight up dick about it, but
Yeah.
yeah, that situation was a, a learning curve, I guess. But also, we were
Mm.
still early on in the relationship, and it was a surf trip, and ironically, it happened on a birthday. I mean, I don't control nature; I just work with it, and
Yeah.
yeah, basically, like you said, I was in the water. It was a birthday. I was only meant to surf for like an hour or two, and then
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know. Well, you obviously know the surf's not good all day, and then the wind went good, and it stayed good for like 4 hours. And I mean, there's fucking 20 other hours in the day that I can spend with her. So I just figured, let me make the most of this because I'm here on a surf trip. But yeah, so little did I know when I got to the beach, I had like a not the best happy birthday girl ever. But I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, by the evening we kind of discussed it a bit and spoke to her. Then
Yeah.
we spent a good night together. And
Yeah.
but yeah, like I said, that was early on in the relationship. Now I probably would have just surfed for 2 hours, not 4 hours, or something like that.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
definitely have
A
to
part of
compromise
me,
that. Yeah.
yes, yes. A part of me wants to say, like, oh, what was going through your head? Like, did you balance up, like, oh, there's my girls on the beach, but the surf's good? But now I'm like, even thinking, like, maybe you didn't even think that at all.
Not
You
a
know, you're just
chance.
kind of
Yeah.
there and you're like, you don't think of the consequences or any of this kind of
I
stuff.
was thinking about the next
Yeah.
wave I was about to get the whole time. You like catch a good one, you think about the next one. You're kind of like
Yeah.
thinking about what's happening right then and there. And that's why it
Yeah.
didn't feel that long for me. I just thought, fuck, if the wind's going good, I'm going to stay out here. And when it goes bad, I'm going to
Mm.
go in. Generally, how
Mm.
you think as a surfer when you're in the water. You don't go in when the waves are cooking. That's like rule number one.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, cool. So it's very like that identity of a surfer played out. And again, there's always this thing that's above
Yeah,
woman, so to speak. And you can see how that played out in many situations.
lots actually.
Um, yeah, yeah. Do you have any other ones or like any things to share that come to mind on that topic?
Yeah, like often she'll want to go away for a weekend, like with friends or family, and then if the waves are good that weekend, there's not a chance I'm going. So that's why it's always
Mm,
like she struggles to book. Um, how can you say the trips in advance.
Holidays.
Now I'm getting a
Yeah.
bit more relaxed. Like I know I've surfed a lot, so I don't mind missing the odd good wave here and there. But it's
Mm.
still, when she like books a trip a month or two ahead, I'm like, maybe don't do that until the week ahead, and then we know for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's a nice way
it's
to live. You're
interesting.
just living by nature,
Mm.
basically.
Mm. Yeah. I was just going to comment there. Like, obviously, I know you guys and you guys make a great couple, but you almost do have this like level of tension in your relationship. And
Yeah,
some people might think of that as a bad thing. And who knows, maybe you even think of it as a bad thing. But I also see good elements in it. It's also like two people who are individuals. And I'm sure you've had to come look to find a middle ground at times, but it's not like everyone's just trying to please the other person next to them. It's like, also being true to yourself, and that still plays out to this day.
yeah, definitely. Like me and her still, we have conflict. It's not as like, obviously there was a few bad ones, but now it's like we have conflict. But it's like, I don't know how to say it. You need a little bit of conflict, otherwise, yeah, it's just a pushover, a walkover, and you don't respect the person, and then they just become less attractive. And it's not like I have
Mhm.
conflict. I'm like, I need to have this fight with her today to make her more attractive in my eyes. It's just she is who she is, and I am who I am, and it's a good balance between it.
Yeah, that's a funny thing that you bring that up. It's not like, hey, I'm intentionally fighting because friction creates attraction, but it's almost like in the field I'm in, like that's what guys will do. They're like, oh, so you shouldn't always be agreeable, and then they're almost like trying to go out their way to like be disagreeable. And what I try to teach men is also like when you're just being authentic, there are things in your life that you like doing. If you just stay true and be honest about what those are, even when your girlfriend or your partner is kind of challenging you on that, that will naturally create a conflict. And that's not always a bad thing, you know?
Yeah, no, it's a
Mm.
good thing because yeah,
Mm.
if you guys just looking for conflict, you're not respecting your values, and then you're not. You can, even if you do look out for conflict. I mean, if say you go straight forward, you're like, I'm going to do this conflict for that. I think you'll bend a lot easier. Whereas if you have a value that you're not going to bend over, you'll have a conflict, but then you'll come to an agreement and be like, this is my value and it can't change unless you show me a way it can change that I'm happy with, or something like that. And then that's where the communication comes in.
Yeah. Okay. Look at you getting all communication on us. I love
Yeah,
it.
new things,
Let's
eh?
jump back to the yeah. Let's come back to the list of masculine lessons I learned from you. So we obviously spoke about the first one, which is a big one. I think it's the underlying. It's so primary for a man. Put your purpose as a man before woman, and that's probably the biggest way men mess up in this. And that's why I think relationships fade out. There could be other reasons as well, but that's a big one. The second one I want to go into is the idea. Another lesson I learned from you is that women like dangerous men. Okay, dangerous men are for women like boobs are for men. We can't help
Yeah,
but look.
never thought of that.
Um, yeah, and you'll see this play out in like the movies with like the gangster movies and stuff like that. But you were definitely someone who wasn't shy of conflict growing up, whether that be verbal conflict, or even physical conflict. You know, like again, maybe looking back now, you might have not done this stuff, but you weren't afraid to get into a fight. But it wasn't even just that. I don't know if it like maybe you put it down to testosterone. Even like when we would have like drinks before going out, and I know you almost still do this to this day. It's like you love like wrestling with people. You know, it's like one stage we're like playing table tennis and like drinking some beers, and then like the next second I look over and you're like tackling someone on the floor. And to me, there's a very like primal thing, you know. And again, I would
Yeah,
kind of look at it from my rational, nice guy perspective. I'm like, what the fuck's this idiot doing? You know, like why are you rolling around on the floor in the dirt? But like I was sitting there like a friendless virgin, and like I couldn't put it together at the time, but looking back now, I'm like that like primality, that like dangerousness. Women find that super attractive. You know, I would look at all of our friends and I would notice that not always, but a lot of the guys who weren't afraid to fight, they normally had like girls, and girls were interested in them because they saw, hey, this guy's a protector. If he's okay to stand up to these other men, that means he's
exactly. I
able to
think that's
protect
it.
me. And this little nice guy who's like being all diplomatic and trying to like stop the fight, like that's cool. And on the surface, I'll agree with him. But like deep down, like in my biology, I'm thinking like this guy's not going to protect me when push comes to shove. So yeah, how did you see like the role of conflict and your like wrestling? And did you think it was just testosterone? Did you love doing it? Like, yeah, tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so I don't think I ever did it to say impress chicks, I guess. But let's start from the beginning. I used to do it when I was younger because I wanted to see where I stood amongst men. You could say, like, obviously, when men have disagreements, you fight, and that's how you kind of get your hierarchy. At least with physicality, not so statusly. But I don't know. Yeah, when I was younger, I always just wanted to know where my boundaries were of who I could fight, how I could fight, and how much I can get like knocked out and see that, all that. Because yeah, I guess when I was younger, that was fun. You feel invincible. You can take on the world, anything like that. Now I do the wrestling thing because I just enjoy wrestling. It gets your blood going and so on. So it's not really the same thing. But in terms of girls and bad guys, I'm not sure why they like it. I think, like you said, like they like someone who can protect them. And if a guy's not afraid to fight, obviously they don't like watching it. Like most people, when you watch a fight, it's kind of gruesome, and you don't like seeing someone getting messed up. It's never the prettiest sight. But I think they do watch it because then they know this guy has got some backbone, and I think that's the attractive part, the backbone. You know, he's like, if you at home alone, or if you and your baby need protect, because I think women think about motherly instincts more than we think, even when they're not mothers. So they like think this man can take care of me and my child. And then if someone tries to intrude on our lives, this guy, I've seen him do it, he can do it, and that's why they're attracted to it. Or it could be along the lines of, like, you know, Beauty and the Beast, where they like seeing a man and a woman like to tame men and at least pull him to some sort of tame. And I think that could be another aspect of why they do it. But yeah, fighting for me was just fun as a kid. Like, all our friends did it. It wasn't like I was just some asshole beating up people. And it was generally like I never really did it to kill anyone. I always stopped when it got out of hand and so on.
I was gonna say, like, it wasn't like you were just this extreme fighter. Like, you were pretty good. I remember I saw you kind of take down some guys a lot bigger than you, but you also got it both ways. I remember a couple of times you got messed up pretty good as well. But it was just more that willingness, and it was really interesting what you were saying earlier. Like, oh, where do I stand in the hierarchy? You know, okay, cool. I could probably take out these guys. Oh, there's a new guy here. Like, where am I? It's funny because I wouldn't really see many guys, and this was probably my perspective, like higher than you know, like there was one or two guys in our friend group who was also pretty badass. But like, yeah, did you ever feel like some guy that you were intimidated by, or were you uh, ready to kind of challenge anyone?
Yeah, I definitely feel like there was. I didn't see it in your perspective. I never thought I was up at the top. I think also because the people, like when you surf, you hang out with a lot of guys who are also pretty savage. I don't know. You would have known a couple of them too, and yeah, I just felt like I was never at the top. Not that I wanted to be at the top, but I never viewed myself as at the top. I always viewed myself as like I had a point to prove. You could say, like, I had to get up there somehow. And yeah, with the fighting side of things, it was, I definitely got smashed more than I was successful. At least the first couple of years. But yeah, I definitely think there were a few of our friends that I definitely thought were, you could say, better with women than me. And like I said, you'd find out where you are physically, and then if you still wanted to challenge the guy, you obviously had to find another level. You'd be like, okay, well, if I try to get this chick with this guy that he's going for, he might fuck me up. Otherwise, now I got to pull out another style, and then you start exploring. Now you start trying to use your mind and try outwit the woman or something. So you kind of have to use best of both worlds when the one doesn't work, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, like we talk about dating here, but like we talk about things like this upbringing or the fighting stuff. But I'm not doing this like randomly. It's because like these are what make a man attractive. Like, men think like, what do I need to do when I'm in front of this girl to be able to get her or something? And there are things you can do, but it's also like, what kind of man are you outside of talking to women? Like, how do you live your life? Because, like I said, you don't only become attractive man when there's a woman in front of you. You know, your whole life plays into this. So that's why it's so interesting to hear some of this. I was curious. I just wanted to bring this up. It's more of a personal thing. But like, did you ever feel like other men were almost like jealous of you? Because when I was thinking of jumping on this podcast, like two of the things that would come up for me is like, if you had asked me like, oh, was I jealous of you and like the success you'd get with women, I'd be like, no, he's like my mate. Like maybe I'd kind of joke around and stuff. But I also think now that a lot of like the comments and stuff I would do or make were like almost like these, I don't know, passive aggressive type of comments. I remember once there was like a surf tournament or competition that would happen in our town, and there would be a lot of girls, and it was like a season where like things would go down. And I remember once I put on like my profile picture, it was on like a BlackBerry or something like that. There was a beer called Krabbies, I think it was. And I like made it my profile picture, and I like made my status or something on the picture, like what Janek is going to have after these holidays, you know? And like on the surface, it's like, oh, it's guys kind of giving each other shit. But like, I look back on that, I'm like, I think I was just like a bit jealous and alone, you know? And it's like, hey, at least I'm in the picture. I'm commenting on, oh, well, if I can't get the girls, I might tell you that you're going to fucking get some weird STD. But it's like, maybe it was a sign from me, like, am I still relevant? Like, keep me in the picture. Did you ever notice that from like, I don't know, other guys or like women, like almost like I don't know, like kind of, I don't even know how to really say it. Yeah.
I don't think I ever felt like other people were jealous of me. Like, I didn't see why you would. Like I said, I never saw myself as the top. I always, like you said, we didn't grow up with a lot of money. Didn't like, and obviously living in the town we lived, a lot of people had money. So to me, that was obviously what always I'd say. You could never be jealous of me because I don't have everything I can give you to. Well, you know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never
Did you
felt
ever
like
feel like a subtle like F you to the rich guys where it's like you were kind of all their girls wanted you and then you kind of like suck on that?
Yeah, because I always felt like some guys that were very wealthy definitely got chicks that were out of the league because they were rich, and that kind of pissed me off because they have nothing but that. And I was like, that's fucking bullshit. So I'd say I definitely felt jealous of some other people, but never like felt that people would be jealous of me. And I actually remember that stage. I don't think it came out of jealousy. I remember I saw it. I was like, cool. I was like, oh, what a cunt! But it's actually quite funny.
Yeah.
It caught me off
Yeah, I
guard.
think like maybe
I
it's like
didn't see it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like guys giving each other a bit of. I even remember another story. I don't know if you remember this one as well. So I'm gonna try and not use too many names. But we were at a friend's house in Salt Rock. I think this was again like after a bar or something like that. And you were with this girl. Her name starts with a T, and the guy's house started with an A. Yes, and then like it's like you with this girl, and like you guys are about to like hook up or like do stuff, and I think like I'm sleeping on like the last couch, or like I'm in the room, or because there's nowhere else to sleep. And I remember you at the time like, hey man, like can you just like step out or whatever? Like I'm about to like stuff's going down here. And I remember at the time I was like such a prick about it, you know. I was like, no, like I'm sleeping here, and like and like at the time, whatever, I might have had my reason, but looking back, I'm like, again, I think it's when you're in this nice guy thing, it's almost like because I felt almost like I don't ever get this, so like, well, at least I'm important. You'll see girls do this, like I was almost like a cock block. I'm supposed to be your friend and a wingman, but it's almost like I'm like, oh well, I'm gonna stop you from doing this because at least I'm in the picture, like I would think back on things like that. I'm like, why did I do that? You know, because someone did that to me, I'd be really pissed. And I was curious, like, if you had that happen with other guys, or if it was pretty much only me. Yeah.
No, it happened a few times, definitely. Like, especially like the worst was when you were trying to like get a chick and your friend was too, and then she'd like say succumb to you. She wants to be with you, and then your friend would just kind of hang around the picture the whole time, and then you got to try to find ways to like ditch him. But in your case, I actually remember that. I didn't see it as that. I suppose you're seeing it as that from now. I just, like you said, you valued your sleep and you're like, fuck you, I'm sleeping here first. I'm not moving. But I was like, what a dickhead. He could have just helped a brother out here. But yeah, I mean, there are definitely cock blocking is not the thing I invented. It's a big thing with everyone. And
Yeah.
of
But
something
I'm fascinated in the
you should try
psychology
and
behind
do.
it, because normally the cock block, no offense, is like some fat, ugly girl who doesn't get the attention. And then like her hot friend is being chatted up by some guy, and she's like, oh, well, guys don't give me attention, so I'm going to take on the role of cock block because, hey, at least I'm in the picture. And it's like,
now you're getting
it's normally
attention.
not a good thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I don't think I've ever cock blocked. I think I did it once to our friend that's with you now, but as a joke because he
Yes.
used to do it to me. So we'd kind of do it because they'd
Yes.
like to piss each other off. But it was never because I
Yeah.
wanted his chick or anything. It was just because I'm giving you back for that time you did it to me, kind of thing.
Yes, yes. It's interesting, a comment you even made just now, like no, it's not that like cock blocks or that thing would be a big thing, but like let's say like your friend really likes a girl, and then like you also talk to the girl and you can see like, okay, I know this girl's into me, but I know this guy's kind of got his heart on the line here. We even have a personal story on this. Again, I don't know how much you remember, because for me this was like fucking heartbreaking, and I don't know if you even remember.
Yeah.
But there was a girl, again, her name, she used to live in the same apartment block as me. Her name started with an A. And I was kind of like chatting to her, and I think we had kind of like kissed a couple times. I think why it was so big for me is because I was still a virgin then, and I was planning on losing my virginity to her. And she like moved away for a couple months, and then she came back for like a weekend, and we all went out. And I think I overheard her even say it like, hey, I don't want to hook up with Daniel, I want to hook up with Janek. And I think I just like blocked it out, like I didn't hear it. And then like we ended up all going back to her place, and I think like one by one everyone left until it was just the three of us. And you ended up like taking her into the room or whatever. But like for me, that was like soul crushing in a way. And I was actually really grateful, because that actually like set me on a path of like, I need to do things differently. So is that like an example of what you're saying? Like, oh, my mate's out there, I know he kind of liked this girl, but like I know she's into me.
Yeah, like you said, I don't know if I remember it correctly because I know who you're talking about. I don't think I ever hooked up with her. Maybe I could. Yeah, if I did, I'm sorry, but
No, you definitely did.
yeah, I was definitely like when I was that age. When I was that age, like I said before, it was more self-serving than like worrying about friends and stuff.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and I almost
sorry about that.
it's not, I don't even like blame you, because it's one thing if I'm like come to you as a man, I'm like, hey man, like I like this girl, like I think something's gonna happen, like blah blah blah. But it's like it wasn't even that. It's more like this hope, like, oh my god, I hope this is finally gonna work out. And then when it doesn't, it's like you didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't like my girlfriend or something, but it's just like, I think nice guys do this, and I'm speaking from experience. Like you create this whole story in your head around you and this girl that actually doesn't exist in reality. And then when evidence happens that to confirm that your story was just a fantasy, it crushes you. But you were the one who created the fantasy initially, and that's what caused you all the trouble, not actually what happened with the girl, you know?
Yeah, that's happened to me a few times as well.
Yeah, I was actually curious. I wanted to ask you, like, have you ever felt like that kind of like heartbreak, or like a girl choosing another guy over you? I'm just remembering another brutal rejection I got in front of you. I'll tell it after the story, but yeah, like, because I'm sure you're a guy, you feel things. I've seen you get emotional as well. Like, how, what were some stories of where you maybe felt a rejection, or where a girl rejected you, or something like that?
Now that I think about it, the first one ever was one of the first girls I ever kissed. And I remember I kissed her, and then the next night it was like one of the girls that lived on Salt Rock Beach, or they had a holiday house there. And the next night I went there, and we were still young. I think I was like, bro, I think we were like 12 or 11.
Yeah.
And it was the first time you could say I kind of had feelings for girls. Like I kissed her, and I was like, just started getting into girls. And then the next night I got there and I arrived a bit late. I think I arrived with you. And then she was there kissing our one friend as we rocked up. And you like burst into laughter in front of me. And I was like, oh my fuck, I want to just die right now and cry. And then that was probably the start, I think, was where I was like, fuck chicks from here on out. I'm never going to make them. Because that was the first kind of, how can I say, fantasy story I had. Like I kissed her the night before, thought about her the whole time I was at home in bed the next day, wanting to see her. And then rock up to the house the next night, and she's kissing one of our other best friends in front of me. And she was just like, no, I want to be with him tonight. And I was like, fucking hell. But yeah, that was me creating this huge story. I only kissed her once. It was nothing hectic. It was just like a young kiss. But I'd been like, this is the girl I want. And I basically made like a whole fantasy about us together. But it was the first girl, so it's understandable. Then she was ready. The next day it was like, boom, in your face. That's not how this shit works, brother.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. I don't know.
It's so funny how we'll remember emotional stories well, because I don't remember that story at all. You know, like I don't remember anything you just said because it like affected you emotionally, and maybe some of the things I'm sharing, you like maybe you kind of vaguely remember it, but like these were kind of emotional hits for me. You know.
Yeah, you just laughed at me. You're like, because you obviously, I didn't tell you my fantasy story about everything.
Yes.
You were just, I just told you I hooked up with her last night. You're like, sweet, I want to come meet her. And then you saw it happening. And you just laughed. And fair enough, you only knew that I just kissed her. That's it.
Yeah, what a dick. But yeah, it's interesting because I would say like that happened to me like all the way into like almost my early 20s, where it's like every girl I would get with, I would like create this fantasy. Not every girl, but a lot of them, you know, and like it kept like come crashing down again and again and again until finally I was like, I don't think these stories are really serving me. And it's almost like in my head, it's like, oh, it's like this romantic, you're this great guy, it's like this love story. But I think it's a lot of the time not really accurate. You know, you're just making stuff up, and then you're causing yourself like unnecessary suffering. Well, I think that's a sign of almost immaturity to some extent. When you're more mature, you're more balanced. You don't get taken away off on these fluffy clouds as much. I'm glad you figured that out when you were 12.
Yeah. Well, no, I still had them, like you said, in my later teens and stuff, but I always remember, like, I'd go on and be like, oh, this could be this, that, and then I'm just be like, some part of my brain would be like, shut up, what are you doing? Just go try your luck and see what happens. Like, do reality rather than fantasy. Because obviously, I think everyone gets that. I don't think you can't. You're always trying to like anticipate the future, and it kind of makes you feel good inside. But I had trouble trying to really believe it because I knew. I don't know. There was always that saying. It's like hope for the best, but expect the worst. And as long as you do that with those fantasies, you know, it's just a fantasy.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Okay, I got a couple more points here I want to get through. Yeah, we've been going for a while. Okay, so we've spoken about put your purpose as a man before woman. We've spoken about how women like dangerous men. I talk about this, it's almost like a man's wolf, you know, like inside of you, you've got like this primal animalistic killer that just fucking doesn't give a shit about anything. And it's about, like Jordan would talk about, like your shadow, you know, have you integrated that? Where the nice guy, it's like he's in denial of his shadow. He's like, no, I'm just this nice guy and I don't want sex and I don't ever get angry. But there's all these part of himself that are really suppressed, and it kills his dating life, which is funny. Like women are actually trying to make you more integrated, and they'll keep rejecting you until you actually integrate those shadow pieces. And you'll see like guys like yourself, or if it happened by chance or you did something, it's like they respond really well to well-rounded integrated men. Okay, this next one is really interesting, and it's about valuing your attention. So it kind of comes into the first one about like, okay, what do you find important in life? But this is how I saw it play out with you, where it's almost like when you're focused on something, it's like you give that thing your full attention. It's almost like a spiritual practice or a concept in a way. I'll tell you that this happened many times, but I remember one time specifically, I think you were like rolling a joint or something like that in the lounge, and I was sitting there because we lived together at a stage. And I remember I like asked you something like, I don't know, like, hey, how's your day? Or like, how's the surf? Or like, whatever, what are you doing later? And it's almost like, and this would happen many times, but I remember this time, it's like, you almost just blatantly like ignored me. You know, it's like you just didn't even acknowledge or say anything to my question. And my little insecure brain is like, oh, well, why doesn't he want to say something? Or like, is that a stupid question? But as I've grown up and I've learned more of these principles of masculinity, I see it from the perspective like valuing your attention. It's like, hey, bro, I'm like rolling this joint. It's like my attention is fully here. It's not like super scattered. Because other guys, they'll be doing something and then like a girl will message in and I'm like, oh my gosh, like the phone. And they'll just drop what they're doing right there, you know, where it's like, again, I don't know if you consciously did this or the cards just fell where they may, but it's like almost to a simplistic way, you always valued your attention And it's almost a sign of self-respect, you know. It's like, hey, I'm not giving my attention away just all over the place. I'm focusing on something and I'm doing it. How did you see situations like that playing out? Would you kind of see it from that perspective, or like share some thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the exact scenario you're talking about, obviously, I don't remember that one because I obviously rolled a lot of joints in front of you, and you probably said a few times like that. But I do know where it's happened before. Like sometimes I'll be in our lounges near our kitchen, so I'll be like, or our little desk where I work on. I'll be writing there, and someone will walk in and start talking. I can hear them talking, I can hear what they're saying, but I won't respond because I'm busy doing something and I need to attend to this first before I can engage with them. And it's actually, I think, more respectful for the other person, because now if I'm giving 50% here, 50% there, you're denying them of their full attention. So it's, yeah, just value on attention and do what you do it 100%. So if you're busy with someone walks in, and you can hear if it's urgent or not. If they're like, hey, help me, I've cut my finger or I've broken my leg, then obviously you go give me attention. But it's like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? It's like, my thoughts can wait a little bit for you until I'm finished this. So I wouldn't say the one with you. I think maybe I was just thinking like of other stuff, and I didn't technically hear you because I've heard it before where people are like, I just asked you that, did you not hear me? And I generally won't hear them. But there are sometimes where I'm busy with something and I don't want to lose my focus. And by them, the thing is, as soon as they come in and do it, I lose a little bit of it, and then that's why I ignore it straight away to get back into it. And I think that is quite a good thing, and it's weird. My fiance taught me more about that because sometimes I would stop what I'm doing and then attend to her, but then I'm only attending to her like at 50%, and then she'll just be like, carry on doing what you're doing and tell me when you're done. And then it'll be like 20 minutes later, I'll come there and then we'll start talking again.
Yeah.
I do think that is a key thing for like literally everyone who wants to succeed in anything, really.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big contributor of success, but it's also extremely attractive to women, you know, because like if I'm like with a girl, but I'm in my head and I'm like, oh wait, like is this gonna happen or that gonna happen? Like she can feel that you're not there with her. And it's like it's almost like I sometimes use an analogy for anyone who knows like Dragon Ball Z. It's like this cartoon, and they would like shoot like energy balls at each other, you know. And when you have high quality attention because you value it, when you actually put it on something, it's like a laser beam, and that thing, and normally it's a person, they're like, wow, you feel that person's presence. You know, you're talking to some people and it's like, wow, this person's really looking at me. I'm feeling like there's like a flashlight on me. And that will be someone who values their attention. And it's the same thing with women. Like, that's why like guys in my space, in the dating space, sometimes they're like, what do I have to say? What do I have to say? But sometimes they're coming with this weak, scattered attention and they're trying to say something and they're saying the right things, but it's coming on like this energy of weak, scattered attention. Is she gonna like it? Is she not gonna like it? Where like I saw for guys like yourself, and all guys are good with girls, it's like when they're there talking to a girl, it's like the girl's almost like, wow, like they really feel his presence. And to me, that means he's got strong attention. So yeah, I think you've always done that really well.
Yeah, if you're thinking about like what you want to say to someone, or let's say this, if you know what you want to say and then you're thinking of the outcome while you're saying it, you're not really, like you say, you're not saying it with the full force of what it needs to be said with. So you should just say something and not worry about the outcome and accept the outcome as it comes. Because the best you can do is give it your full emphasis of what you're saying. You can't control it, so what's the point of thinking about it?
Yeah, that's a really big point. So I thought you always really valued your attention. It's also like I think we all can like scroll on our phones and stuff like that. But again, I'll notice with some men, I'll put myself in this category. It's like almost like you can't stop checking your phone. You know, it's like nothing else interesting is going on in my life. So it's like, oh, that's who's responded, who sent me a message yet. But where I'd notice like other men, and specifically with you, it's kind of like you're just living your life, and like that's almost like a secondary thing, where for other guys it's communicating like nothing really exciting is going on in my life. So if this girl texts me back, that's going to be like the best thing that happened to me all day. where it's like you've got other things that you value really highly. And it's almost like, cool, if the girl takes back, awesome. If she doesn't, not a big deal. But there's not this so much importance placed on it.
Yeah, definitely. Like a phone, I really don't think is a thing I admire. I just use it for business and checking weather and stuff. Obviously, sometimes I scroll around if there's no power and I'm bored and stuff. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's something I'm too keen to. Like, I always try and avoid my phone as much as I can. Like, get it away from me because it kind of steals me from what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. Last one, and then we're going to wrap this up. So, the fourth thing I learned from Janek about masculinity, and it kind of overlaps with some of the other ones, but this is a big one, is don't be scared of a woman's emotions. Okay. Don't be scared of a woman's emotions. So, think of it like this. Why are guys scared of getting rejected? And it's probably a common fear, I'd say, for most men. What are you really scared of is you're scared of, number one, the disapproval from the woman, but also her sense of dissatisfaction. I go in there, I tell her she looks cute, I try to chat her up, and she says no. She says, I'm not interested. It's like men are so fearful of that happening that they'll avoid even going and speaking to the girl. And this will happen on many, many different levels. I remember a story, one with me and you, Janek. There was two girls, I'm sure I could say their name because I don't really even follow them anymore. There was this one girl I was kind of into. I think her name was Sonia. And there was one girl, again, I don't even think you were really into her, but it was her friend. Her name was Kayla, I believe it was. And I'd kind of organized that they were going to like come over to my place for a day or a night or something like that over a weekend. And then I was like, message you like a day or two before. I'm like, hey, like these girls are coming over. And you're like, yeah, man, I'm actually like going out of town for the weekend on a surf trip or whatever it was. And I remember like sheer panic, like coming over me, like freaking out. Like, what do you mean, bro? Like, how could you? Like, it's this is massive scarcity. But it's like I was so afraid of like how they would react. It's like that's not a good sign for you as a man if you're fearful of women being upset. Now, that maybe you don't mean you make women upset on purpose or anything, but part of a man is like you going to war and your wife's at the door crying, saying, please don't leave, please don't leave. Like, part of your duty as a man is like, hey, my wife's in tears, but I know what I got to do. But like, I guess in today's age, like, guys will be like, hey, guys, I can't come to fight in the war. Like, my wife's going to be a bit upset. Like, I'm just going to stay at home with her. I'll give one more example of you. And again, this is a bit of an extreme example, but it really hits home the point. I remember also one night we had come back from like a bar or something. So maybe you're a little bit drunk as well, but this blew my mind. We were sitting, I think, like in the garage or something with your now fiance. And you guys were kind of joking around and just like talking some stuff. And I think you picked up some scissors and you were like, and you like took some of her hair and you're like, yeah, I'm going to cut your hair. And she's like, don't you dare, you know, and you're like, ha ha ha, I'm going to do it. And in my mind, it's like, oh, he's bluffing, you know, like there's no ways he's going to do it because there's no ways his girlfriend doesn't throw a shit fit if he does do this, you know? And to me, it's like you knew it was probably going to not end well, but it wasn't going to be so detrimental that you were going to be done with it. And you did. You cut her hair, you know. And I remember seeing that. I thought that was the wildest thing I ever saw. But it really drove home the point, not from a way of like you don't care about how someone else's feel, but I think men are really suffering today where they're scared. They're scared the woman might be upset. They're scared she might be angry, like XYZ, and over silly things like they want to go play golf with their friends. And they're like, yeah, but what's the wife gonna say? And it's almost like, to me, it all ties back to like being scared of a woman's emotions, which also almost communicates that you see them as higher in the hierarchy because women are there and that they're expecting you to be the leader. And it's kind of like the president makes a decision. A lot of people are upset. That's the cost of leadership. It's like a man makes decisions in the relationship. There will be times where his partner will be upset. That's the cost of being a good leader. And I think a lot of men are faltering specifically on this point. So yeah, man, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on that and then we'll wrap it up.
Well, yeah, I think everyone, you naturally are, when you do something, you're kind of scared of the result. But I think the easiest way, it seems simple to me. I just said, like, whatever the outcome is, you just got to accept it. You're never going to control anything, like I said before. So, for instance, if you are going to say something that you think, okay, I want to go play golf and it's going to piss my wife off, you just got to know you want to do what you want to do and accept the outcome. And that's, I don't know how much to say on it, but like, for instance, the one with the scissors and the cutting and stuff, to me, that was just me pushing boundaries, really. And I thought, look, if I cut your hair, you look ugly, I'm with you, it's bad, it's going to be worse for me. So I'm happy to see you however you are. You know what I'm saying? It's not like she was going to go try and pull another guy or anything. So, and I wanted to see, well, first of all, she told me she dared me. And if you know me, you don't fucking dare me to do anything, because high probability it will happen unless I'm going to break my arm or something. But yeah, I think going on with women's emotions, like you said from the start, I had quite a emotionally charged mom, which allowed me to explore all different types of emotions, and you could never grasp it or control it or even understand it. That was the first thing I learned from my mom. She'll never understand a woman or their emotions, so don't even try. Just learn to accept it and take steps forward from that. And I think that's probably the best advice for not letting female emotions get to you. Is you're going to try to think of things, and they're different, let's say, species, or not species, they're just completely different, program wired, whatever you want to call it. So by you thinking of outcomes that could possibly happen, yes, you might be right 2 out of 10 times, but now the other 8 times you've gone and created this thing where you are so wrong, and now you got to recalculate how you want to do things. Rather let it happen and then calculate from there once you have the reality in front of you.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up the point again, going back to the mother, because often a man's relationship with his mother will become the template for the relationship with the wife in good and bad ways. But normally it's like men are still little boys to their mother, mommy, I had a bad day at work, like give me a hug, and like that type of thing. Where part of being a man is like you'll also become the man for your mom. She can look to you and you like can be there for her. Where it sounds like with your mom, who was obviously very strong, that almost helped you to see like, okay, there's woman's negative emotion, because the dark mother will do the opposite. She'll try use her children to satisfy her own emotions. She'll use them for her own emotional healing or soothing. And the child is either agrees with it and say, cool, mommy, I'll be here for your emotions, which is not a good thing for a child. Or it happens, I think, in your case, where it's like, you're like, hey, like, that's not my role. Like, don't put me in that box. And that can cause conflict. But that's actually a really healthy process for a mother and son to go on.
Yeah, especially in the long run. Like I said, we had a few arguments back in the day, and I was like, I even told her now when I look back, I was like, that was very brave of you not to just say, cower it in and just say, come here, my child, I love you. She would be like very persistent for me to go through the discipline I need to do to make it my own fault. And she could have just said, look, come here, I can help you and protect you. But she would almost get to a point where we would argue so much, she would end up in tears, I'd end up in tears. And at the time it sucks, but looking back now, she gave me, I think it was harder for her than me, to be honest, to not go and be like, I'm your mother, come here and let me help you so you can't help yourself, kind of thing. That was exactly I thanked her the most.
Yeah, that's cool that you guys can see it now from that perspective. Okay, last story, and then we're gonna wrap it up. This was something interesting because I see where a lot of men battle, and this might come naturally to you, is they very almost like ashamed of their own sexuality. They're like unfamiliar with it. Like even going up to a girl and saying like, hey, I think you're super cute. It almost feels like the craziest thing in the world for them to do. And we've obviously talked about some of the reasons I believe you're a very successful woman, but the last, or one of the other big pieces for me was also like, you were so comfortable with sex and sexuality. I remember once you'd have girlfriends, like at your parents' houses, you'd be having sex with your girl, with a girl in the room, and it would be so loud that like the whole house would hear it, like your parents would hear it. Like I'd be in the kitchen, like getting something to drink, and like your dad would walk through and it'll be like, hey, what's up? And then it'll be like, like in the background. And it's almost like I couldn't almost deal with that level of like, I would be embarrassed, like this is a nice guy. He's embarrassed about his sexuality. And I know your parents, probably more than others, were very open about their sexuality. They didn't hide their sex lives from you guys as children. I thought that was like wild growing up. But then it's like I'm seeing the other end of it where men are so ashamed of their sex and their sexuality. They're so scared to be sexual with women, where like, again, I think this comes back to your upbringing, but like you've always been very kind of comfortable with sex and sexuality and like no shame around it. So yeah, why do you think men battle with a lot of that shame, and what do you think helped you with that growing up?
Yeah, well, I'll start with the second part there. I think the part that helped me with growing up, like you said, I had parents who, let's say, they didn't have a religious point of view, so sex wasn't like a sacred thing. And I think for most people growing up, at least in the Western world, religion is quite a big thing, and it puts a lot of sacredness on sex, which has good and bad, like pros and cons to it. But yeah, I think with my mom, she always just said, look, you can't be worried about sex. If anything, get good at it, because it's going to be a fundamental pillar of your relationship. And don't ever, she always said, like, obviously keep your door closed, but if people speak to you and you want to talk about it, don't feel like it's, how can I say, something you can't talk about, because as soon as you can't talk about it, then you can't explain it and you can't actually get better at it. So it was always like, I mean, they were always having sex, like you heard and saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just, I think that was the main thing for me. It was never like this, how can you say, voodoo kind of thing that happens behind closed doors. And I think with this day and age, with men and stuff, why they, or even just general people, why they like that is, I'd say it comes a lot down to religion, because that's the only place in my, you could say, unknowledgeable mind, is where they sacredize sex and say it's like one person only. And I don't know, it's kind of like a very, how can you say, one of the best things a human and another human can connect on. And I'm not saying you have to go and fucking smash everyone and everything, but it's definitely, if you can't talk about it, how can you ever feel it to its full experience?
Yeah, man, those are some great
So I
points
think,
there. It's so cool, yeah, that your mom gave you that, and it's like you said that you can talk about it. It's like, hey, I had a meal. Hey, like we had sex. It's like it's kind of on the same level. It's not like, hey, I had a meal. Oh my gosh, like sex, like this is this big, freaky, like intense thing.
yeah, like,
Because yeah, you
how do you
mentioned
tell
the
her
religion
I
thing.
didn't like it like that or something?
Yes, and then it's like
Yeah,
the
carry on.
sexual experience, the sacredness goes out of it, because I wouldn't even say,
Yeah,
obviously religion talks about sacred, but it's a lot of shame, it's like this is something you should be embarrassed
yeah.
about. Don't talk about it, like you're sinful if you do it. And I think like you saying like you felt like you didn't have those influences. Your mom would even encourage you like, hey, like get good at it because it's an important part of a relationship. And yeah, she's 100% right.
I even think society, now that you say that, like shames it a bit. Like, think about it. Why say we have to go down to our bare minimalist clothes? It's like a pair of speedos, and when a girl goes to the beach, it's like cover up that and that. Yes, but that puts like a shame on it. Like you can't see these, or it's like there was someone to say, "Oh, it's for the special person," but it does build like a structure in your mind to be like, "This is." Say mine, not yours, and I can't. It just puts that thing. Like, you remember when we were kids, my mom used to take us to the beach. We would go to the private beach and run around naked. She'd say like,
Yeah.
"Just be free," kind of thing. And
Yeah.
that, I think, does help a lot if you can come to terms with just being free, I guess. That of your physicality, I guess.
Yeah.
That was
Awesome,
probably,
man.
now
Okay,
that I
I
think
think
about
that's
it,
a
that those things were like probably the biggest
yeah,
things.
yeah, for sure, man. I think that was so cool. And it's so cool to see from my perspective anyway, how all these different pieces, and I'm sure there were a lot more, like kind of formed you into where you are and the man you are today. And I think a lot of men can learn from that, because I think a lot of men are battling out there today when it comes to some of these basic things of what it means to be a man. Any final thoughts from your side in terms of a message for men, your life going forward? Obviously, you now are engaged. Like, any kind of final thoughts, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I'd probably just say life changes a lot, and your perspective of it and everything changes. So in the beginning, it does get self-serving, but like I said, I valued myself a lot more as a kid and teenager and young adult, and now as you get older, I think the most important thing to me is definitely relationships. So yeah, try not to fuck things up too bad that they can't be repaired, and yeah, going forward, remember relationships is what you have, and uh, what can I say? Anything else like money or anything tangible like that, it's not going to go to your deathbed with you. But just see where you are in life and kind of make the best call from there, because everyone has different stages and need to do different things.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, don't try and mess it up too much. But apparently, cutting your girlfriend's hair, that's still okay. Janek,
you can mess mess up a little bit.
Just trim it a bit. Just trim it a bit. Janek, was awesome to have you on the podcast today. I think guys will find this really valuable. And cool. We'll look to have you on again in the future, and we'll wrap it up there. Bye bye.
Shot, Daniel. Good to hear from you, bro.
Thanks for listening to the Magnetic Man podcast. It was so great to have you tune in today, and we really appreciate your support. If you want to be a positive stand for masculinity in this day and age, to be a man who stands up for what's right and is attractive to not only women, but every person that comes into his life, make sure to support us. Subscribe if you're listening on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a review. We really, really appreciate it. Let's make men great again, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.